Okay. Page 4. We have it, it's recorded. I don't know if you saw it.
Are you recording right now?
It could be, but I'm telling you the recording now that it's recorded, so you're able to see it. Anyhow, we're holding page 4, and I'm just going to go through the nikudas, the points that we learned, so that we can continue. So the Maimer focuses on the first pasuk in the parsha, and actually, when you complete the Maimer, so you read the first pasuk in the parsha, and you read it like you've never read this first pasuk in your life. And the Maimer, it's what seems to be a very, very simple introduction to what the parsha is going to talk about, which is the ledger and the accountability of everything that they collected in the Mishkan, all the Zav and Kesef and everything else, actually is really illustrating and defining the whole purpose of the Mishkan and what it's there for. So we said that the question we asked was, why does it say in the pasuk it says Mishkan twice? It says Mishkan Pikudei Mishkan, and then it says Mishkan Eidos. And we notice the difference between the first Mishkan, it doesn't say Eidos, Pikudei Mishkan, and the second one it says Mishkan Eidos. And the Alter Rebbe asks several other questions. So the Alter Rebbe, to explain it, first begins with the whole idea of Mishkan, that Mishkan is there to be that the whole idea of a Mishkan is that there should be a dir b'tachtenim, that there should be a dwelling place for the Eibishter below. Whether that is specifically in the place of the Mishkan, or it's by every Yid. So usually we bring down the Maimer Chazal, Shachanti b'seicham, b'seichol ne'emar ale b'seicham, that the Shekhinah resides in each and every person individually. Over here, the Alter Rebbe brings a different pasuk from Yirmiyah, where it describes the dwelling of the Eibishter in every Yid, that the fact that Yidden are called Heichal Hashem and Heichal Havaya. So why are they called Heichal Havaya? Because in the Yid, in the Yid dwells the Eibishter. How does the Eibishter dwell in the Mishkan and in every Yid? So the Alter Rebbe says that's through Torah and mitzvahs, and that's what it means. That the tshuva ma'asim tevim that a Yid does in this world is greater than chol chayelim haba, because when he does Torah and mitzvahs in this world, so he brings down the Shekhinah. In other words, he accesses a much higher level of alikus than is revealed in Olam Haba. But specifically, how does he bring down the Shekhinah specifically? So the Alter Rebbe says that's through iskafia. So l'chura, the Alter Rebbe asks a question: iskafia, what's iskafia? Iskafia is to subjugate, to break sitra achra, and first you break it, and then you transform the world and to make it a keli for alikus, for godliness. So l'chura, the whole idea of sitra achra is something which is not teifes makim, doesn't have any significance in relationship to the Eibishter. Meaning to say, as Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, like a spider, he called a smamis. In Hebrew, in Mishlei, he refers to as a spider, as a smamis, that be a dayin titapes, v'hi be'echalei HaMelech. The spider is in be'echalei HaMelech, and because it's in Heichal HaMelech, the Melech is so far removed, so it's not bothered by the fact that there's a spider there. Which is a mashal, Shlomo Melech is giving a mashal of Sitra Achra, that is not being, that it's able to have an existence because it's not Teifes Makim. So if Sitra Achra is not Teifes Makim, so how is it that by that by doing iskafia, which is subjugating the Sitra Achra, all of a sudden you access such a high level of elikus that through that you make a dira b'tachtenim. So in order to explain that, so the Alter Rebbe first goes in to explain the difference between mitzvahs essay and mitzvahs leis essay. That mitzvahs essay and mitzvahs leis essay, we find a davar pele. We find something amazing. That l'chura, one would think that dira b'tachtenim, the whole idea we said is the Eibusher created the world to dira b'tachtenim. The dira b'tachtenim is that there should be a dwelling place for the Eibusher. The Eibusher should reside. So in that context, l'chura, the what should be more significant, mitzvahs essay. Because when you do a mitzvah, so you bring down a likus into the world. When you prevent an avera from happening, when you don't do an avera, so then you're not bringing down a likus into the world. You're preventing something negative from happening, l'chora. But the whole idea, as we said, is of the Mishkan, is to bring the Eibusher down into the world. Bring the Eibusher down into the world. L'chora, that's in your mitzvahs essay. So why is it that when Chazal explain, when we say mitzvahs essay, mitzvahs leis essay, so we say that the Shmi and Zichri. Shmi, the difference between Shmi and Zichri is Shmi is my name, and Zichri is the way that the Eibusher is referred to. For example, when we take the name Yud Kei Vav Kei of the Eibusher, so Yud Kei Vav Kei, we know that the way it's written is not the way that it's mentioned. It's said. It's said when you say Adoi Shem. So there you bring out Adnai. That's the Eibusher as the master of the world. But the way it's written is Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the Eibusher as the creator. That brings out a much deeper aspect, a much more subliminal aspect of the Eibusher. So that is called Shmi and Zichri. So Shmi is the name, the way it's written. Zichri is the way the name is said. So Shmi and Yud Kei, when you take the Shmi, the letters Shmi, and together with Yud Kei, which is 15, so you'll have, that's Shasa. That's Shin Samachay, that's the mitzvahs leis essay. Zichri with Vav Kei is the mitzvahs essay. So what do you see from that? That the mitzvahs leis essay are higher than the mitzvahs essay. Mitzvahs leis essay are connected with the Shmi and the Yud Kei. So that's what the Alter Rebbe begins to explain. Why is it that dafka mitzvahs leis essay have a mile over mitzvahs essay? Once we explain that, then we'll go back to explain how is it that through iskafia, and which leads to ishapcha, so one accesses a level of divine which is higher than stam doing Torah mitzvahs. In other words, the way he does Torah mitzvahs, which is through iskafia, reaches a much higher level. Okay, let's start base. We spoke the first couple nekudas here, but let's begin from there. Page 4. Why is it that we brought from the Zohar before that when a person does iskafia, so it says istalik yikar de kutrabrichu. Istalik literally means to depart. But we're not trying to say that the Eibusher is departing, but we're saying that this is a level of elikus which transcends the world. So it's like it's departing from the world. Not that it departed from the world, but it's a level which is as if ki'ilu it departed from the world. It's a level which transcends the world, and that's what he's accessing when he subjugates a Sitra Achra. Valei in asitrach tefes smoking cloud bishtalshus kidua. Ukmesh kasu smamis be'adayim tetapes. Like we said before, that's bihi b'chalei hamelech. Achlini nu v'magdim sherishinim mitzasesim mitzasoisesim. So here the Alter Rebbe goes and explains in order to understand the Maila of Sitrach, the Maila of Iskafia. So the Alter Rebbe goes into the difference between Mitzasesim and Mitzasoisesim. Kihini yedua ma shekasa b'tikun ezer b'agdomo. Apasuk zeh shmi lo yedom zeh zichri shmi im yud kei shasalo yizaseh. Vav kim zichri ramach mitzasesim. V'hine yud kei l'mayla m'chines vav kei shar yud kei hu shem b'fnei atzmei. So the Alter Rebbe says here, it brings a raya that Yud K is higher than Vav K because Yud K itself is the name of the Eibishter itself. Vav K by itself, without the Yud K before, is not the name of the Eibishter. Gam Pirush Yehei Shmei Rabban, another proof. The Alter Rebbe brings them as the Maila of Yud K is from what it says Yehei Shmei Rabban. So Yesh Mefarshim, the Alter Rebbe brings from the Torah that there's a Mefarshim that say what is Yehei Shmei Rabban? Shmei, which means name in Aramaic, but if you break it up, it says Shem Yudke. Yehei Shem Yudke Rabba. So you see, Shem Yudke is Rabba, is greater. Ukmish is Baragam Kain. Another ayah the Alter Rebbe brings from the pasuk on Histaris Hashem Elokeinu. So there the Alter Rebbe, what's Vaniglis Lanu Levanenu? What's Nistaris? Nistaris means that which is hidden. Niglis is that which is revealed. When you look at the word Hanistaris, you see the Hey. The Hey is Nistar. What happened to the Yud? The Yud, the pasuk doesn't have to say it's Nistar, because the Yud is obviously Nistar. Over here, the Chiddush of the pasuk is that the Hey, the first Hey, is also Nistar. And then, so that's the Yud K. V'hanigles is the Vav K. And the Vav K is Nigles. So here the Alter Rebbe brings another proof that the Yud K is higher than Vav K. Again, all supporting the question, l'chura, how is it that Mitzvah Leisese, which is connected with Yud K, is higher than Mitzvah Sese? V'chein, and another ayah the Alter Rebbe says is that that it says in the Kunei Zohar connects Yud K, it connects Mitzvah Leisese to Shmi. Shmi l'mayla m'china zichri. K'muv n'mashakasu v'gemara say Perek Gimel the Pesachim. And there, in the Gemara, as he brings on Hara 21, brings that what we said before about the way it's Nichtev and the way it's Nikra. Right? So what's the point of all this? And that's why we find in Halacha that overall mitzvah that the hilchis tshuva, that someone that transgresses the mitzvah and does tshuva, so right away it's forgiven. Mashenkin mitzvah lois say tshuva teila, because mitzvah lois say are higher, so therefore you by transgressing a mitzvah lois say you don't get tshuva right away. Tshuva only hangs until Yom Kippur. V'hainu lefi hang meaning it protects you, but until Yom Kippur, but the actual chet is still there. The sin is still there until Yom Kippur. V'hainu, what's the reason why it's much harder to do tshuva for mitzvahs leisase? For the reason we said. V'hainu levishinim mshachim b'chinas yudke, because it comes from yudke. Yudke is from a higher place. Being that it comes from a higher place, the only way to extract tshuva is through Yom Kippur. That's the question the Alter Rebbe asked. That's the pele. L'chura it's a pele. Shari mitzvahs es inyanim gilu v'amshachas alikus ha'idei ma'isizu. The Ramach Pikudei Ramach Yivam the Malka. There you're doing a mitzvah. We say in Zohar that the Ramach Pikudei means tzivuyim, commandments. The Ramachiv are in their like limbs, as we'll soon elaborate more on what the mashal is, but they're like limbs in the sense that just like a limb is what the nefesh is being extended, is expressing itself through the limbs. There's no ma'isa. So again, this question is the key to understanding the ma'ila of iskafia. That's why we're going into that. So Alter Rebbe says, Hi anisenes. Hi anisenes means for that reason alone, that we want it, that you're asking the question, that itself is the reason why mitzvah loisese is higher. What are we saying? That mitzvah, what's the question coming from? The question is coming from l'chora mitzvah, you're doing a maisa. Mitzvah loisese, you're not doing a maisa. That itself, that mitzvah loisese, you're not doing a maisa, that itself is bringing out the maila mitzvah loisese over mitzvah sese. How so? The fish, because it comes from such a high place, you don't have the way, you can't create a keli below. How do you make a keli? You make a keli through not doing anything. In other words, not engaging in the avera. That's creating the keli. And he brings a biur where we see this point in the pasuk. Be'eretz lo zerua. What's be'eretz lo zerua? That pirush shahazriya. What is this riyah? How are you sowing the eretz? A simple pshat in be'eretz lo zerua means it's a land which is not sown. But here the Alter Rebbe says, what's not sown means the loy is sown in the land. The loy, the mitzvah loy, say that's the keli. Pirush azri bechinas loy, hainu b'kiyum bechinas loy. The hainu shmiras mitzvah loy say. As through the loy say zeh mamshich bechinas asher lo yashav adam sham. So then you're mamshich the inyan of lo yashav adam sham. There is a adam. That's a certain level. There's a level of adam and there's a level of lo adam. The level of Adam, that has to do with mitzvah seseh. The level of loy Adam, that's mitzvah seseh. So by doing the loy zarua, how do you bring down the loy? That's by fulfilling the mitzvah seseh. Hainu l'maylam b'chinas mitzvah seseh she'b'chinas Adam. So there's the Adam and loy Adam, right? So the Adam is the Ramachivarim de Malka, like an Adam that has that, and the loy Adam is higher than. So the Yuvan Zen. So, okay, the Alter Rebbe laid it out, that the reason, in other words, why we think that mitzvah's essay is higher than lois essay fakert. For that very reason, you see how mitzvah's lois essay is higher than mitzvah's essay. But what's the beer? What's the explanation in that? The difference between mitzvah's essay and mitzvah's lois essay. So Alter Rebbe is going to explain. The beer goes quite till. For the next till the end of this period, actually till the end of the next period. I just want to point say the nekuda beforehand, and then we'll see it inside. The difference between mitzvahs essay and mitzvahs loises. So we said from the Zohar that mitzvahs essays are mach pikudin de malka, is a varim. So the mashal for mitzvahs loises is gidim, right? We say ramach varim and shasa gidim. What's the difference between Evarim and Gidim? So Evarim is the pshat that you have the chayis of the nefesh, the and the chayis of the nefesh, which is nimshach in the way it's mitzuyer, the way it's formed, the way it has, the way it takes a certain design based on the specific Evarim, the hand, the foot, the eyes, etc., etc.
Each kli takes a
each aver gives the nefesh a certain seer, a certain form,
function, expression.
Then you have shasa gidim. What's the shasa gidim? The shasa gidim is the keli for the blood. By the blood, there's no difference between the blood that's in the hand or the blood that's in the foot. It's the same blood. That's one thing. The second thing is the blood is constantly moving. What does it mean it's constantly moving? Means that in the blood there's a ratzi v'shev. When it gets pumped, so how does it work? The blood gets pumped into the body. It's giving oxygen to all the ivarim, to all the limbs. That's how the cells are alive. But what happens right away? The blood flows back to the heart. It doesn't stay on. What's the pshat? What's the idea of ratzi v'shev? The neshama comes down in the nimshal. Abratzi v'shoiv, we say it by the neshama. The neshama comes down into this world, and the neshama it feels where's the chayis? But the neshama receives, the chayis is because it always feels its source. And therefore, because it always feels its source, so even when it's in a state of giving chayis, it feels its source, and therefore it's constantly yearning. It's yearning. It's constantly like a flame. Its motion is always towards the source of where it comes from. Not only do we see it in the motion, but that's where the chayis is coming from. The chayis is coming from the fact that it's still connected to its source. In other words, if it wouldn't be connected to its source, then it wouldn't be administering chayis. So where do you see that? You see that in the dam. The dam, even when it's giving chayis, it's also going back to the source. In other words, the chayis that it's giving in the Eivarim is because it has in it, it didn't lose, it hasn't become detached from its source, and therefore you actually see it in the physical motion of the dam, of the blood.
Committing on the Devarim, it's not expressing the full nefesh.
The Eivarim is now
limited.
The nefesh is mitzuyin. Now, and there's a difference, and there's a difference between the way the Eivar, one Eivar and another Eivar. The eye is not the ear, the hand is not the foot. There's Eivarim Chitzainim, Eivarim Pnimim. As opposed to the Gidim, so here you see the nefesh is much more
Expressed.
visible and expressed than in the Eivarim. So the point we're getting to is that the Shasa Loisa say, the Mitzvahs Loisa say, bring out is a much more expression of the Eibishter than mitzvahs essay. But before we get to mitzvahs lois essay, which really we only get to Perek Gimel, first we want to understand mitzvahs. Before we get to mitzvahs lois essay, first we want to understand mitzvahs essay. In mitzvahs essay itself, you have two levels. You have the level of Torah, of mitzvahs, and you have the level of Torah. Mitzvahs are a more external, outer expression, and Torah is a more primistic expression. As Alter Rebbe is going to say, that's like you have two types of Eivarim. You have Eivarim Pnimi and Eivarim Chitzainim. You have an Eivar that the chayis of the person is not dependent on it, and Chas v'Shalom, if something happens to that limb, so the person could survive, then you have Eivarim Pnimiyim, which if even something small happens to it, so that there you see that the chayis of the person is dependent on that Eivar. That's the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. And then we'll get to mitzvahs loisasei, and after mitzvahs loisasei, then we'll understand the idea of iskafia.
Torah is the primi.
Torah is primi, yeah. Okay, let's see inside now. So first, let's understand the Indian mitzvahs essay. That they are. What does it mean that it's a Ramachi Varim de Malka, 248 limbs. V'shasa loisasei shasa gidim shebehen hadam. V'hinei Pirush Eivarim hu al derech mashal ha'ever hu kli l'chayis and nefesh libish b'eh. So the Eivar is a keli, a vessel for the chayis of the nefesh. K'mei keach hasechel ham libish b'reish v'keach ha'maisi b'yadayim. V'hinei mevor b'beinyanim. So in beinyanim means in Tanya, chelik aleph perik nun aleph, there it explains איך שהחייס המלובש באיברים הוא רק בחינת גילוי והורה מהנפש. So the chayis is not the nefesh itself. In other words, it's not the pshat that the nefesh itself has a hand and the nefesh itself has a foot. But that the nefesh, the chayis, it's a gilui from the nefesh. It's a ha'ara of the nefesh. The ilu nefesh atzma lo shayich lo shemischalekes l'ramach eivarim. Can't say the nefesh itself has a varim. The nefesh is a pashut. Pashut means it's seamless. It doesn't have. It's not part. It's not sums of. It's not many parts to it that make up a whole. V'gam agilim mimena meir mislabish v'meichen. Now here you have, the Alter Rebbe is talking about different levels. First, the Alter Rebbe is talking about the nefesh itself. The nefesh itself, it's not mischalek at all. It's not subdivided at all into parts. Then you have the ha'ara of the nefesh, which the first place the nefesh resides is in the moyach, is in the brain. Now, there you have what we call in the terminology in Gemara, you have a klal and a prat. You have a klal means a rule, and a prat is a detail. So you have, when it's a klal contains within it, without specifying. It's not specifying all the details, but you can trace all the details back to the klal. There's something in the klal that gives a insight or gives an expression that you can trace back each of the pratim, each of the details to it. That's not, the nefesh is not a klal. The nefesh is an etzem. It's not divided. You can't divide the nefesh. In the klal you have that's already a ha'ara of the nefesh, and there you already have different parts, but not the way the parts are is individual, as specified parts, but there you have the parts as they are all inclusive in the klal. And then you have the pratim, then you have all the parts itself. But that's the next level. You in Shom Barichas look there in Tanya, and there the Alter Rebbe is Meirich. There the Alter Rebbe elaborates. So each neighbor then receives based on the makeup of that limb. So what? But from there we understand. That while taka the nefesh itself is then distributed and goes into the klal and then the prat, but even after it's a prat, it's still nothing else other than the nefesh. You can't say it's something else. It's the nefesh. It's the way the nefesh now finds itself in that, administered in that particular way. And the lush is v'hayu la'achad mamish. Sha'nefesh yamaskeles. Who's the one that's coming up, that's thinking? It's the nefesh. V'hi hamidaberes. And the nefesh is the one that's speaking. And v'istalek ha'nefesh ma'aguf. And the biggest raya is that when the nefesh departs from the body, it's not the pshat that now you have something, part. Nothing's left. None of the koiches of the nefesh now, the way they are manifested in the body, is left at all. So how do you move on? So it's understood. That's the lashon. That to say that it's unified, it's one with the nefesh. It's not, you can, even though it goes through this process, but at no point can you detach it from the nefesh itself. So that's a mashal. The Alter Rebbe is using the mashal of the nefesh to understand, again, mitzvah seseh. When a person does a mitzvah, this is what happens. Let's see it inside. So this is an imshal in the malka. That's the mashal that we use when we say that the mitzvahs are like ivarim. What do we want? What is the depth of that mashal? The depth of that mashal is to understand what it says, to understand how the mitzvahs are one with the Eibishter. In other words, when you have a mitzvah, When you do a mitzvah, so you're bringing the Eibishter. That the whole idea we want to say is the idea of V'shachanti b'seicham is to bring the Eibishter down into this world. How do you do that through a mitzvah? In order to understand the depth of that, we use the mashal of the nefesh. That despite the fact that the nefesh goes through the process of first is the etzem nefesh, then the nefesh is mislabish in the moyach, and then it's broken down in the pratim further. So that's the iyu v'chayu v'gar moyachad. Ki chayui hu ha'er v'chayis nimshach mein tzeiv baruch. The chayui, the chayis of the Eibishter, that's the chayis which is mislabish. That is mislabish in chesed. So in other words, what do you mean mislabish in chesed? That means that the chayis itself doesn't have a tzir, doesn't have a form, doesn't have it's not defined, it's undefined. V'niya chesed nikra d'roya. Chesed is called d'roya, means it's the arm. Just like, in other words, we want to bring the mashal and the nimshal that we said before, the mashal of the person, la'avdil. But the mashal is you have a hand, and in the hand is mislabish the nefesh. So there's a chayis, which is the Alter Rebbe is going back and forth, the mashal and the nimshal. The lav mikol inu midas iyu klal. Varim kein iyu v'chayu ichad. So if so, comes out that it's iyu v'chayu ichad. What's iyu v'chayu ichad? That the iyu means the Eibishter, the Ein Sof, and the chayui, that the chayis that come, that is the chesed, that is the chayis, which is mislabish in chesed, it's one. She'or v'chayizem yuchad b'mekere in tzeiv baruch hu. And you want to understand how it's one. This idea of achdus, like we said in the mashal, the chayis of the chayis that is in the aver, how it's one with its source, which is the etzem nefesh. That's regarding that's the chayis that's in the air. In other words, that's the achdus, the oneness that is in the air, which is mislabish in the aver. Then there's the also is achdus of the aver itself with the Eibishter. V'gam iyu v'gar moyachad shehu yizbarech u'midas chazdem yuchadim b'tachlis. So again, you have the chesed. The chesed is already when it's mitzuyer, when it has a form, a certain description. Then you have the chayis, which is mislabish within chesed, which gives chesed its form. And then you have the Ein Sof itself. Here the Alter Rebbe is bringing the his achdus, the unity it's inseparable. All these three things. Sai the chayis, sai the Ein Sof, sai the chayis, and sai the kelim. V'hinei hamshocha zu sheyislabish ein Sof b'ramachim the malka derech mashal li's ir v'chayu v'gamur echad. How this hamshocha that we're bringing down, just like the chayis, which is nimshach in the body, in the aver. So this chayis, we want the. You don't want. It's not the world. The Eibishter created a world. The world was created independent of Torah mitzvahs. Means it was there in order to perform Torah mitzvahs. But the world itself it has an existence. What we want with mitzvahs here is that we want to see how the chayis that is in the world is really one with the Eibishter. That's why we use the mashal of the nefesh and the guf. Just like the nefesh and the guf, you see clearly how the guf is one with the nefesh. So too, by doing a mitzvah, which is, we use the mashal of doing mitzvahs, like a varim, like limbs, meaning that by doing the mitzvah, so one brings out how the world is one with the Eibishter. How that which, the mitzvah that he's doing, which he's affecting the world, is one with the Eibishter. Yeah, clear. So each, depending on which mitzvah it is, that's how he brings down the achdus of the Eibishter, the unity of the Eibishter in that particular area. וכן על ידי סוסו לשתק שכבש יש יצרי, שהוא גם כן מכנס גבורה, כלומר, זה על איזה גיבר. So also when one overcomes his Yetzer Hara, so it's also Gvura. But each one of these mitzvahs are bringing down the Achdus of the Eibishter. Okay, so there the Alter Rebbe gives you the mashal and nimshal legabe mitzvahs. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to take it a step further to understand the difference. Based on that, we'll understand the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. As we said before, that within mitzvahs itself, within the Vavke, which is the mitzvahs essay, you have two levels. You have the level of mitzvahs and you have the level of Torah. More specifically, the Vav and the K. The Vav is connected to Torah and the K is connected to mitzvahs. In Ramach Evarim itself, you have two different levels of Evarim. Ha'echad Evarim achitzeni, va'abez Evarim apnimim. And the Alter Rebbe goes on. Mashenki mitzvahs lois say we have no time to. The mitzvahs lois say is the Yudke, means when one does within, we said before, the mashal of the Gidim, Shasa Gidim, which is the blood, there you don't see the idea of the blood, like we said before, it's the same blood. It doesn't matter the blood in one Aver to another Aver, which brings out that even within the Gilui Elikus that comes into the world, the way it comes into the world is in a way of Pshitas. Meaning there's no distinction between one and the other. That's a much higher level. It's almost like when you have the difference between a finite, something finite, and something infinite. Something infinite comes the way it's expressed is in an infinite manner. So where you don't see the distinction, you don't see the finite aspects of it. And that's similar to the Din of Loises, say, the way we reach that is by the Loises. I'll we'll just end off with one point that maybe it'll make it a little easier to understand. The Alter Rebbe says there's a difference between, even in Seichel, when you understand something. So there's two levels in understanding. You have the one level of understanding is when you understand the Inyan. You understand what something is. And then there's the higher level of understanding, or meaning higher level understanding means you can comprehend something which is even beyond your capacity to really grasp it, but you grasp it in the way by understanding what it's not. So even though you don't really know what it is, but the more you understand what it's not, the more you feel it, the more you can sense it. It's a different. So you're reaching a much higher level, a much more abstract level. So the Inyan of Mitzvah's essay is like understanding something and comprehending it in a way that you get it. And the Inyan of Mitzvah's Lois essay, which we said is understood or accessed by the not, that's like what we call in Yediyas HaShlila. It's by understanding what it's not, you comprehend, and even on a much more abstract level. And that's the Maila of Mitzvahs Lois over Mitzvahs essay, and that's the Maila of Iskafia, and that's the difference between the two Mishkans, the two levels of Gilui that come into the world. When one does Mitzvahs essay, it's Mishkan Stam, and when one does Mitzvahs Lois essay, it's Mishkan Eidus, because just like Eidus is testimonies given on something which is hidden, so too this second level of Mishkan Eidus is accessing, bringing down in a revealed way something which is hidden, which is the loy, by like the idea is Hashlila. Okay.
What's a gashmistic mashal for idiyas hashlila?
What do you mean?
Like what is there anything gashmis that we understand?
That's that itself. You don't. It's not gashmi enough. You mean? When you idiyas hashlila, when we want to understand something, so by the more you understand what it's not, the more you have somewhat of an understanding in it, but even though you don't fully grasp it. Or Shasa Gidim. And then you have to bring out the whole idea that the dam and
To learn the memory.
no, but I'm saying we said before it also has that nekuda in it. Okay.
Shkach.